Okay, we're off. Good morning, everybody. I'm in Harrogate here. I've got my beautiful assistant, Noel, assisting me there in Belfast. He's dealing with the slide. A couple of technicals there with Zoom. Oh, it's the great white hope, apparently, but slightly struggling with it. But we're up and running. So welcome, everybody. Noel, if you could put the slide up there, please. I can't quite see that yet. Here she comes. Very good. So we've got quite a bit of interest in what is a very niche subject. It's not our biggest source of work by any stretch, but it's still very important if people are stuck in this situation. And it goes back to the Antichrist, that is the Swiss Franc mortgage. Swiss Franc mortgages stem from the last property crash and financial crash when there was the crazy availability of money, and basically people were at their work, is the polite phrase, earning huge commissions on selling these fancy financial instruments that weren't necessary. If you go back to the day in Cyprus particularly, there was a situation where you had what would have been then the Cypriot Cypriot pound. You had obviously Great Britain pound, you've got the euro, and obviously the Swiss franc, and you've got a heated property market. What could go wrong? Anyway, it did go horribly wrong. So we're going to run through our experiences and the work that we're doing there. It's not getting resolved. Banks are dragging their heels at best, but there's a little bit of movement, which at the point that we're going to refer to there in respect of the loan sales that are coming through. And as ever, we would say this anyway, we always implore people to take action. Inaction solves nothing. We've got to do something about it. It may not suit what your argument is. You may think you've been wronged. We will touch very slightly on the mis-selling. But if you want to resolve what won't change and could possibly worsen, then action is required. So Noel, if you could just put up the content slide there, we'll just move on to the points that we are going to cover in this sort of fairly brief seminar. One thing we always do ask whenever we do a seminar or a podcast or whatever, we do ask if you can just help us. We support the NSPCC, having real difficult days as everybody in today's world. If you could put on that link, just fire a 5 or a 10 over, that'd be very nice, and it's obviously one of the most worthwhile causes going. So that's our list of contents. What we're going to do is after this, we'll send around this PowerPoint, which hopefully can act as a bit of a ready reckoner, and if any points come out of it, in the last slide, there's my details there. You're very welcome to contact me if there's other specific items. We did get a couple of specific inquiries, and we're dealing with those slightly differently because they're confidential in nature, and we will contact those people. Not to sell you anything, it's on the back of this. If you want to proceed, cool, that's great. And obviously there will be a cost, but this isn't what this is about. This is to impart the knowledge and experiences that we've had and developed over 5 years dealing with Cyprus. Our main market is Spain, but we work literally all over the world and have settlements in America, New Zealand, Canada, and a couple of others. So Cyprus is a little bit of a bugbear because it's quite an ugly one, and it's dragged on forever and a day. So we're going to the next slide here, which basically the next couple of slides explains how we've got to this place. So if you could put the next slide, Noel, please, that's great. So we come up with something fairly bold there, okay? We say Swiss franc mortgages were undoubtedly missold. There are class actions aplenty. To my mind, they've little or no chance. They've been going through the Nicosia court forever and a day. And I would respectfully suggest, and hopefully not offend too many of our legal friends that may be listening, but that's money for old rope. Trying to take any class action, any action as a Brit or an Irishman or whatever variety in another country, it's very difficult, and Cyprus is no change to that. We have class actions in Spain. You have actions in Spain to recover deposits. Everything is very difficult, very slow, and Cyprus is no different. But if you're trying to get that class action through in there, we possibly think you're backing the wrong horse there. So this became a cross-EU issue back in 2006, when again, the snake oil salesmen were out there trying to sell these convoluted financial products. And by today's standards, it definitely wouldn't happen. Poland, in a very recent case, we put eradicates. They're not recognising the Swiss franc mortgage, another place that got hit quite extensively with this product. And Poland just said that we're not entertaining those, and I don't know the actual outcome, how that unravels, but basically they're not going to be recognised, and I think the properties will just revert back to the lender in whatever form. On the right-hand side there, we've almost got the perfect storm here in Cyprus. We've got the huge drop in property values there, that's an RICS graph there. It shows partial recovery, but still not back to the levels of 2006-07, which would have been the prime crazy times when, say, cash was aplenty, dodgy mortgage products, dodgy financial instruments, and that's where we are. So across the board, we're still talking about an average of 40% drop in terms of Cypriot properties for the tourist second homeowner market. And we have that coupled with the next slide, Noel, which we'll now look at, which is the Swiss franc and how that's appreciated over time. So since 2007, when the Swiss franc was about 223, against the pound, it's now at 118. So again, the graphic shows not a lot of science to it, but in terms of a graphic, it works well. So you have the Swiss franc mortgage going through the roof, and you have the value of the property plummeting the other way into the basement. So that creates, as I said there, the negative equity element there in the red, along with, as I say, the perfect storm of the two instances, the fall in the value and the appreciation of the currency. Somebody that we quite regularly listen to and take on board is a man called Nigel Houth, who runs a website, Cyprus Property News. Looks a bit like the FT in terms of its look, but it's very informative, keeps you up to date with everything that's going on there, and we're politely calling them the anomalies of the Cypriot system. The next slide, which we go to here, shows the Cypriot legal system. Possibly the shortest slide, because I think that may reflect what we think of the Cypriot legal system. It is there and it works, but it's frustrating, and the solicitors that are at the base there, we have a very good solicitor there, are equally frustrated by what's going on. You have the first instance where you have still ongoing land registry problems, but it's a bit like trying to close the door after the horse has bolted. The problems exist, and now they're trying to rectify them by getting the land registry right. This was a requirement when the IMF had to dive into Cyprus and basically keep all the Russian money, but then the Cypriot government needs supported by the IMF, and a requirement then, I think it was 2012, 2014 that they were there, that they had to get the land registry sorted so that banks could start dealing properly with the NPLs, the non-performing loans, but as yet, we're still waiting to see the actual fruition. It's ongoing. And again, Nigel Howe's commentary right the way through that keeps everyone up to speed. If you want to subscribe, you can be quite sad like us and read that every week. Not a lot of movement, but Nigel say keeps you up to speed there. Then it manifests itself into the problem with deeds. The first time I went over there and I was strolling around Paphos, it's fun trying to get a bit of a hang of what was going on, meeting a few people. And estate agents' windows, very often they will advertise a property which, and if it has got deeds, it is in there. It's the main feature with own deeds. You know, obviously in the UK and Ireland, that's a basic. But out there, it's still being worked through, and it's difficult because you've got everybody involved. You've got banks, potentially developers. We've had a couple of cases where developers still had a hold on the site. And then ultimately to get to the end place, you've then also got the local councils. And strange enough, all three parties there have their hand out, looking for recompense, payment, I have to be very polite here and call it a bribe, whatever it takes to rectify the legality or otherwise of any property that's held out there. So the Cypriot legal system itself isn't so bad, but the components and the raw materials they have is still a hell of a mess. So that then takes us on to the banks, and these are the main protagonists that we're dealing with. You've got Alpha Bank, which is the main one. So that's primarily where it all went on. We've got some cases there with other Greek and Cypriot banks. So you've got the Hellenic Bank, Bank of Cyprus, and then coming more onto the radar and getting quite aggressive, Piraeus. They did a lot of lending across Eastern Europe with a case there with some Bulgarian properties, and they are just getting a little bit aggressive. but that's fine because at least they're engaged and they want to move on as well through some of this rubbish. So they're the main players. Alpha Bank are primarily there. We've attended a couple of meetings with them in Paphos there. We'll come to the banks in a minute, a little bit more detail, but their polite phrase will be they're quite hard to motivate and to get going. I think basically it'll be generally a couple of tons of TNT under the building there might get them going. So difficult enough. Now, one thing that is becoming more and more apparent, and I think this will post-COVID. Okay, so pre-COVID-19, there was a bit of a sniff around in terms of the potentiality of banks sending the loan books to vulture funds. We've a lot of experience of vulture funds, particularly in Ireland there, and not the easiest people to deal with. They want their pound of flesh and some, and that's why we call them different animals with a capital A. The banks, within reason, you can talk to, you're trying to get to a solution. They vulture funds, they're affectionately known. They simply look at it, how we're going to get every penny out of that, and it becomes a different deal altogether. They've been late to the party, but I think this will increase as especially Cyprus and to a degree Spain, as they must now push on and tidy up their 2008 messy loan books. They're all non-performing by now. They would have all breached every covenant going, so I think this has become more and more prevalent in the next few years, and this is typically when they come out the woodwork, these sort of guys, the vulture funds, the Promontorias of the world, Cerberus, etc., and they're ready to go. I think they've been sat in the back at the back here because of these title issues, but they have ways of doing it, and they've become very strong in terms of cross jurisdiction. When we first started dealing with them in Ireland, even Northern Ireland to South, it was deemed to be an issue, but they quickly overcome that. They appoint managing companies to deal with these things. They get their biggest solicitors involved, and as I say, they become completely different animals. You may have had a relatively easy run with the banks in terms of how you conducted yourself, how they've conducted themselves, how you talk to them, etc. These guys are coming, you owe the money, there's a bit of a property here, we're going to tidy it up. If you've a shortfall, we're coming for you. What have you got? If you live in England and you've managed to appreciate some equity over time, that all comes into play, and you have to be very careful how you deal with them. Again, I would say this, try and avoid these people if you can. If you've got a situation with a bank now, get on with it and try and resolve it now, because eggs is eggs. This will happen. They are coming next, and it's the way that, as I said, with the way that banks tidy up their NPLs. It's the quickest and easiest way to get rid of it. Most likely discounted to nothing anyway. So if they sell it for nothing, it's neither here nor there. It's starting now in terms of our next slide, Noel. We're looking at now, it's a bit of UK pressure coming to bear as well. And as all foreign banks that are dealing with British and Irish people are getting more aggressive. They're trying to get in there. They've had enough. We understand the dynamic in terms of we look at, say, Brits and Irish will look across the world, Brits, especially with Brexit coming, the good old B word there. They look at us in a distrusting way, and similarly, on the reverse of that, Brits look at Spanish and Cypriot banks especially as dodgy characters. Everyone's been robbed, everyone's not conducted, and it's a big face-off. Solves nothing. Our job is to get amongst that, always act for the client, but look to get the financial institution to the party here. So the pressure will come on the UK especially, and the loan sales will come at some point. So then you've got the frustrated banks in Spain, and to a fair degree on Cyprus. It's quite hard to get a judgment because even in their own countries, purely because the courts are absolutely rammed. We've helped a couple of people where action started, and we managed to sort of, if you like, frustrate it and hold it, so it gives you the ability to talk. In Spain, it's taken 4 years to get a judgment minimum and or repossession, and Cyprus isn't too far off that. But to overcome that, what the banks are doing, they're coming straight to the UK. Either they have an office, say, in London, such as Piraeus do there, or they're just adopting, getting solicitors, and they're getting quite aggressive, firing out the, excuse my French, the RC letter. Then, if need be, they will move on to either a writ and or a county court summons. taking their chances. They're relatively easy, I say, to frustrate, defend, but they're bringing it on a bit. There's also a debt collection firm we've come across recently there in Leeds, which is where our EU office is. We're in Belfast, but EU are based in Leeds there. And they're starting to act for banks in Cyprus especially. And the pressure will come. It will increase. It will increase. And if they're on your doorstep, it's a different ballgame. So you've got the three components there. You've got the potentiality of the loan sales. You've got the likes of LCS and any other DCA, any other debt collection agency that is, bring the pressure to bear here. And if you've got Piraeus in terms of a deal we've got there, we're trying to sort out, they will then start to use the correct jurisdictional legal process. So we have a client in Northern Ireland there, and the bank have gone to London, and now they've come to Northern Ireland. So they are stepping it up. So it's brings everyone to the party and looks to get the problem resolved. If we look at the next thing, our attack to this in Cyprus particularly is along these lines. Okay, so it's slow. I put in this morning, definitely not our fault. The process in Cyprus is painfully slow. Even if you're trying to get rid of the thing, and you've got to get all the parties engaged. The slowest component of this, and if any Cypriot banks are listening to this, I make no apology for saying that that's totally down to you. To actually get them to engage, you nearly have to threaten the banks, which isn't big and clever. It's not great, but it's literally just to get their attention. A set of keys in the post suggests that somebody's serious. We're not saying that's the route to take necessarily. Obviously, we would go in and try and engage and get them going, but very often it has to be, right, do what you want, and we'll take our chances. But it's crazy. We don't come across it anywhere else, literally in the world, and it's difficult. We talk later of the fact that they do have a massively demotivated staff, which is understandable, but nobody's ever sort of quite gripped this problem. There's almost like a fear of them being accused of mis-selling, which again they have been, but it's trying to get to the party whatever it takes. If you're ready to go down the process to look to rid of a property in Cyprus and you are in negative equity, make sure you get all your financials in order. Okay, it's because you need to supply the bank statements. We need to look at asset and liability statements. We need to look at the level of negative equity accurately, because trying to get values, as in Spain, is quite difficult. And now post COVID-19, you can start talking your 10 to 15% discount from your pre-COVID-19 valuation. So it's a lot to line up. Not hard, but it's making sure that everybody knows where they stand. Then it's establishing and making sure you have a strong supporting legal team, which we do have. Now, we've kissed many frogs, many frogs. That's not a racist thing about French people, in terms of finding good legal teams. And it's taken us 5 or 6 years. If you've got a good solicitor and you're confident in their ability to do this, then all good and well. If not, find one. Do not pick up what was the yellow pages and try and find somebody to help you through it. It is difficult to find that. In Spain, it's the same, and we have a great person there, a couple of people there. So it's essential you have strong legal support, and importantly, they really do know what they're talking about. They have to be tested, they have to be pushed, they have to be shouted at. Not big and clever, but it has to be. You've also then got the stage where the bank valuer attends the property. And we've had a couple of conflicts of interest there, where you had the valuer going out to value it. Now was the valuer back in the day, and he didn't want to let himself down by saying, right, my first valuation was rubbish. And you start to get into the crazy bits of having to justify what really is the open market value. We're trying to do that from Leeds and Belfast. They're on the ground, but they're still not getting their value right. So again, another potential element of frustration. Then you've got to get the final agreement right, because we've had clients who have said, yeah, I dealt with that matter and it was settled and everything was put to bed. That's cool. And now the bank are chasing me for whatever, 150,000 euro. And we show us the final agreement. There wasn't one. Okay, well, it wasn't sorted then. And there are quite a few instances, of that. And the final agreement is vital. It's signed off. Our man in Paphos there is excellent. If we have to argue terms at the end, yes, we do the monetary amount, we do the financials, everything else. But these agreements have to be literally nailed to the floor, because It's slack there. It's slack is the best phrase. Useless would be the other one. It's frustrating. It's what we do. We have to see it through. We have to argue more or less with everybody and drag everybody to the well. But it's what we do. We know it comes to the territory. But we're informing people that may be in this position. You use that whatever you want. Okay, but get a good bottle of wine and have a go at it. If you could do the next slide, please, then. Again, we're just going on about the banks painfully slow. The polite phrase there I've used is slow to appreciate issues. Okay, they don't want to recognise issues. They do have the backdrop of potential still ongoing class actions in Nicosia there, but it's just making sure, guys, if you want to sort this, you can. Okay, you have demotivated teams. I visited the Paphos office, I think it was about 2014, and there was no power in the afternoon because the bank was in that sort of place. They weren't getting paid regularly on time. You know, in a huge financial organisation, that shouldn't be the case. They, in Northern Ireland parlance, they can't be asked. They can't be asked. So, but we have to keep driving. Then, for some reason, they have this crazy expectation on prices. They're totally devoid of reality. Totally. Why? We can never quite bottom it. There was a guy, they were giving an example. They were of the opinion it was worth €97,000 all day. The one next door literally sold on the open market for 60,000, but this 97,000 was in their head, and it's a major block. In the end, we said, forget about it. We don't care about that. We're going to give you a bit of money to settle this. If you get 97,000, knock yourselves out. But they won't get 97, so it is quite tricky there. And it's trying to do this reality check in its how that's dealt with. Because rather than keep saying you're crazy, you're not wise, there's a kangaroo loose up in the upper paddock, whatever you want to use, right? It's dragging them slowly to the realization, this is where you are. But it is, again, the frustration abounds, but we have to overcome it. And it's the uncommerciality of it. If you're pointing out, if we throw the keys and you come after us in 10 years' time, you sell the loan for nothing. If clients are ready, engaging, willing to try and resolve this one, it's making sure you get them to join in. Uncommerciality, crazy expectation on prices, and an overall change in attitude is quite hard to instill in a polite way. But never rude, but we have to be very forceful here to make sure there is that level of engagement. So painfully slow. And then we've got that next slide, please. Now, I've got a couple of examples here and a couple of Q&A. I've gone fairly quickly through this, but for a reason. It is a niche subject for us, and it's just sort of to give people a bit of a taster of it, really. So this was the property where the bank were going a bit nuts and thought it was worth 97,000 euros, right? Now, when we went through this, I had a quick look at it and said, hang on a minute, guys, you're getting all the currencies wrong here. But this is the other thing, the backdrop we have to work. So it goes back to the date where this guy's got a property in Paphos, no title deeds, always a good old no title deed, so imperfect security. And at the outset, he used a Swiss franc loan, or sold a Swiss franc loan of 250,000 Swiss francs. Then the bank decided, they went through a phase where they gave some of the loans a bit of a haircut, which is unheard of. Wasn't substantial, but it still took it down to about 145,000 sterling. Stay with us on the currency side. But the bank by then obviously were working in euros. When our client took his Swiss franc mortgage at the beginning of 250,000, it was Cypriot pounds. So we'll be polite and say that everybody was at their work here. So we've 145,000 any which way, 60,000 euro value, despite their 97. Wherever you want to pitch it, we're between 50 and nearly 100,000 pound of negative equity. Long story short, James worked there with our solicitor, James Bell, my co-director, also my son. Worked with the solicitor there in Cyprus. We got the bank to the party. The solicitor was looking at the deeds and what we can do to resolve that, to get it, help the bank, because we're looking to help the bank as well, believe it or not. But we were concentrating on the financials, obviously, to get them away. And what we managed to do is say to the bank, the easiest way is if we sign off our rights on the property, the bank will then own the majority of that title along with the developer. The developer was still on the property or had an interest in it because the bank had not resolved their issues with him since 2007. Back to the speed of everything going on there and everything else. The other thing that was very important in this case was that it voided the sale any sale, which would take forever if we're arguing between. So they're saying you can't sell it for under 97. We're saying 60. So we haven't got to go through that rigmarole and all the associated costs that go with it. So that eradicated that issue. And because of the complication of the title and or land registry, then a client had to employ, not in a huge financial way, the use of a Cypriot barrister to make sure that all of this was put to bed correctly with the lender present. This wasn't a case of fire around an email and I'll put my signature on it. This had to be put to bed and sealed properly through the Cypriot courts, and that was done. And our client was pretty happy. He managed to move on. He was fairly resigned to the fact that he was never going to resolve this, and has turned into a great testimonial guy for us, and likes to shout our name from the roofs, because he did have a go at himself, but it's a bit of a, as we call it, an Elm Street, a nightmare on Elm Street. But we got there, we solved it. Took about 15 months, but we got there, and our client is over the moon, as we say in football parlance. If we can show the second settlement we did there, this was in Larnaca, again, no title deeds. Now, the situation we had here was the bank was still dealing with this, and our client lived his life and carried on and developed quite a nice little property portfolio in England. So that's okay, good man. Swiss Franc loan, 241,000. Again, we got that correction from the bank for whatever reason they decided back in 2014. This was one of the worst built properties we've ever seen, and to get 80,000 would have been good. But again, we still got that huge disparity between the value and the discounted loan. So, and we're most likely talking that 80-odd thousand there. So in the end, again, a similar process that we adopted on the case that we referred to as example one there, and the settlement was achieved with a 15,000 sterling. They wanted sterling this time. Last case, they wanted 20, same bank, and they wanted 20,000 euro. This one, it was 15,000 sterling. And again, we avoided the sale and the costs, and also to put the thing completely to bed, our barrister and our solicitor, and the cost, the added cost, yeah, there is a bit of a cost. I think it's about 2,000 sterling, but it ensures is literally rubber stamped, because again, as we were explaining, there were previous instances where people have thought the case had been put to bed and it wasn't. So we make sure that door is firmly closed. So a couple of, they're not massive savings. It's not, they're big enough, the savings. And if it came to it and it was given away the property, and this client, say, might have been chased for 150,000 after costs and everything else, it's ensuring that the legal process is rushed through. Okay, it's what we do. We work with legal teams. We get the financials right, and then we push the case through with the bank, and also make sure, in this instance, we tie up the legals. Very, very similar to Spain, but a lot quicker in Spain in terms of our ability to talk to the lender sensibly. So that's a couple of bits of the work we've done there. As I say, EU Property Solutions works across Europe and the world if need be, because essentially what we're working on in the main is our cross-jurisdictional strength as is. This is before loan sales. So that strength is that knowing what they can do to our clients in the UK or Ireland. So we did get a couple of general Q&As, which we're looking at here. I'm going to refer to. There are a couple of specifics I don't want to go through, because we have to be very careful, GDPR and whatever. And we're going to catch those couple of people separately, and just give them everything we do, give a free consultation anyway. If people want to use the advice and try it themselves, cool. All we always do say is be careful, because when you cock it up, it's very hard to retract and get right again. So, two questions that flooded in here. We've got somebody saying there, they've got an ongoing class action, and should I keep paying the fees? Now, it depends where, obviously this is subject to where the case is, but we know any number of instances where there are class actions going on and they're going nowhere, and the solicitors, whatever team they are, be in UK, be they Cypriot, be they barristers, whoever, it's a bit like going to Las Vegas, system working well, send more cash. To my mind, yeah, you could do it. There's a lot of people torturing themselves through this route and cannot give up mentally on it, and that's a shame. If the case, if ever we're wrong and these cases come through, great, absolutely fantastic. As is, They don't just seem to be going a lot of where, and there's a lot of disappointed people, a lot of frustrated people. Yes, you were missold. We get that, but it isn't going to resolve it. If you think it's going to go through the class action, your solicitor's great and it goes through, fantastic. But a lot of these cases are 8 to 10 years old already. And our feeling is that it's not great, but it's a personal choice. Again, make sure your legal team, question the legal team to within an inch of their lives. Make sure you get some commitment from them, because they're all great, saying that we can never guarantee anything, da-di-da-di-da, but they need pushing to the nth. We've got a gentleman here he's just received a writ in Nicosia, and can they take action against him because he's a UK resident? Absolutely. If you've a loan and or any facility in a foreign country under the EU rulings, which I think will still be there after Brexit because it suits everyone's argument. If you get a judgment in, say, Cyprus or Spain, that then in turn is recognised in the UK, and Spain used it quite a bit, Spanish banks, to quickly push to implement, secure second charges on properties in the UK. So yes, they can take it to court in Nicosia, and you do have to follow their protocols in terms of filing defences, intentions to defend, and everything else. Sometimes they're issued out of frustration if clients haven't engaged with the bank, if they just literally give them the 2 fingers and sent them the keys. Strange enough, that doesn't sort things. And what you do have to look at is get the engagement. We've had a couple of these where we've made submissions to the courts for clients via our legal team there. Then we get back to shall we talk, rather than running up huge legal fees in Nicosia. So anybody who thinks they've just driven off into the sunset and this thing has gone, no, it hasn't. It will one day manifest itself. And as our demographic, not to be rude to anybody here, ages, quite a few people are thinking about how they will leave their estates and not leave, trying to think of a polite phrase here, but piles of shite like this hanging around to go into an estate. It's messy, it's horrible, it's very upsetting, and becoming slightly more prevalent, as we say. So yes, they can take you to court, and they will take you to court ultimately, or come through loan sales and come and get you. I'm trying not to be too scary and a scaremonger, if you like, in this, but this is what will happen over the next few years. So we nearly know what we're talking in this particular niche, and generally across in terms of cross jurisdictional property debt. So that's a very quick wing through. I know we can only really talk around a lot of these things. I'm quite sad. I could do a series of these, breaking it right down. There's our contact details. As is, we give a free consultation on anything. We tell you what we can and can't do. We do need the engagement of people of what they have and some financial information. Any questions there, those are the points of contact. My mobile's there, right? Not great on the mobile, but you're very welcome to leave a message, a text, or whatever. And there's a telephone number, email, and there's our website. Beautiful website. Please go there, because our marketeers love you to admire our lovely work. And if you've got any questions, queries, please do come up with them. We're here and able to answer them. So good luck. Thank you for joining us here. And if you could, final thing, if you could look at the NSPCC, that'd be great. Thanks a lot. Bye now. Cheers.